I don't want to leave you with the wrong impression from today's labors. I honestly don't mind discussing my concerns as though there is a mature, intelligent recipient. That doesn't mean there is. You have to keep in mind that one of the things that I've studied a lot was John Kennedy's assassination, which was, in some ways, very straightforward. Some lethal weapon hit him in the head. He was not tortured repeatedly with intent to make him suffer torments until he was dead. In public view, with the whole awareness of the Department of Health and Human Services, for example, with the assistance of the university system, Federal Bureau of Investigation, catering provided by a couple of rock stars. So, what I want to discuss with you is the operational narrative that surrounds me in Tacoma, that comes out of Pittsburgh and gets its blessings from Seattle. I'm not saying that it's the truth. It's the opposite of the truth in many ways, because it depicts me as somehow willfully framing Reagan and to blame for what they claim is the death of John Lennon. So they say, I'm not entitled to be paid for my work and my injuries. In fact, I should be tortured to death, injected with HIV and various other things they said. And this narrative begins outside of Baum Boulevard's slope down by Howard Johnson's, or up a little further towards the park, Shenley Park, where I sat down and thought maybe I'll see Baloo. And I did. He was walking up to the supermarket or the laundromat or something. I said, hey, Adrian, he told me he wasn't that interested in me. I said, that's okay. I gave him the postcard from Fred, which caused a lot of problems. I mean, more recently, Robert Card shot up a bowling alley in Maine. I mean, the torrential maniacs of Carnegie Mellon University are fanatical commercial poachers. But it caused problems way earlier than that. Because my guess is I don't really know what happened. Why I gave it to Adrian Ballou when I didn't particularly trust him is because I trusted Fripp, and I wanted them to understand that I was concerned, not collecting. I wanted to understand what was going on. And he evidently went out to the very worst people at Carnegie Mellon University and said, who is this guy who's been crowding us? And Peter Sinfield, whose work with Ian MacDonald was used by an Attica State prison psychiatrist to earmark me in a cruel and crude and vicious Manson ordeal. Peter Sinfield circulated a petition with the help of Roger Waters, Amanda Harcourt, an attorney for Yoko Ono, saying I wasn't sensitive, I wasn't empathetic to why people were rejecting me. I was not accepting, I was hindering my own development. And we were all rejecting. It was a fabled petition for rejection that was circulated by Peter Sinfield and Ian MacDonald that became a refusal. A Stonewall was chosen, word that was chosen because there actually was a protest called the Stonewall for the gay community way back in history. But they convinced all of their friends and all of their people that not investigating the script and warning people and protecting them from these Israelis who wrote the script was a legitimate petition to reject an insensitive man who was crying from neurotrauma and deafness and so on. And then they said, well, we'll get all the money. And when they got around to castrating me, they ripper murdered Shannon Harps over what they claimed was a penny demarcation line. They murdered Circe too. I don't know anything about what happened at the Tree of Life, but they embroil and imbrogliate it into the narrative in such a way that they can evoke it in terrorizing me. And they use Princess Diana the same way. I had nothing to do with any of that. I wasn't even aware that people were this occupied with me. I certainly didn't see myself as an aspirant to the royal family. I simply liked the music of King Crimson and Peter Gabriel, Genesis. And that's not a crime. They made it into one by saying I was crowding them. I'll tell you what happened. King Crimson, long my favorite band. I mean, from the time I was 9 years old, my favorite band. When I was about 20, 21 years old, was doing a warm-up at the sound check in the afternoon in the gym at Carnegie Mellon University, and the door was open. So I went in and I sat down. And Adrian Belew first manifested a being mentations to the effect that my effervescences were disharmoniously vibrating. And there's a legend that years later, Peter Fripp dropped his pick. And arguing over this was Tony Levin, about who I knew nothing and could care less. And I sat there not looking my best, tired, exhausted, and let them work it out and play. It was a pretty good concert. I've never had much aptitude when it came to social graces. That night, my half-brother from Fox Media was looking the wrong direction when Fripp came up, but people say don't be pushy, right? So I didn't want to shake his arm. This is Fripp, this is Fripp. Well, Fripp was nice that night to everybody. I think David eventually met Fripp or connubiated with him over the script that they pretended to find. That's the truth. But according to their narrative, they said ever so discreetly and ever so innocently. Does there happen to be a parcel of roguish-looking letters thick as a brick from Israel that we could have? And they had Eno and Terry Gilliam on the phone. Yes, we're looking for a parcel of roguish-looking letters that are thick as a brick from Israel. Does it happen to have something like that in his drawers? He does. Oh my goodness. Goodness. We didn't know. And this is the storyline that came about that results in treacherous hillbilly crimes and stalking and domestic terror, and has, Poacher Basque sending me signals before they released COVID, which was obviously Inslee. and Donald Trump. Jay Inslee and Donald Trump. What were those kids' names? Chris Tucci and Carl Boyd. Chris and Carl, right? This is a language system that Peter Sinfield and Brian Eno work on real hard because they believe that they own the letters in the alphabet, for example. They really believe that. They believe that who you think of most when you hear the letter L signifies ownership of that letter. And this is the way they think, and they have artificial intelligence backing them up, and they have plans. They do this whole thing in stages. Like they had AIDS, COVID, Hamas Day. I mean, they do this stuff in stages, and they all in the internal dial of it have it all worked out. But they have this soap opera story. Jimmy Crary, who was abandoned by his father, was a wuss who could have saved John Lennon but was hunting a virgin. And he gave Robert Fripp's postcard to Adrian Belew, who hounded him out of Pittsburgh because Reagan didn't know, and he was framing Reagan. And they had Seattle crashing airplanes and blowing up ports in Lebanon and threatening this magic mountain. The Black Panthers were threatening their own children with flashcard nuclear destruction because they feel that the empathy levels are not in tune with the superiority and supremacy of the Jewish virgin and her version of events, which have nothing to do with the truth. Obama and Jeffin had it all worked out to poach her in a public display Midori Goto for the black man, and they had it in films. There's a telltale clip. There was a eugenic exchange, the eugenic union. You took the Indian woman, so William Raspberry will go berserk. He will kick paper boxes and break bus windows if the black man doesn't get the Japanese symbol of life. And the United Nations was apparently behind it. That they were apparently behind it because they believe in an arc. I mean, these smoldering ruins we call our industries. They say we're overpopulating. We're overpopulating with cars. People can get along fine if we spend our money wisely. In fact, the more you help people, the lower the birth rate is. Look at Germany. I mean, they pretend that they are trying to get a hold of things responsibly, but really they're laughing up their sleeve because of their maniacal cunning, planning, and far-seeing wizard room of magical prediction that they can pull these kinds of pranks about. It's a ridiculous prank from the cinema Hollywood system. They faked John Lennon's murder. I believed in that stuff. I was asking, why would you help the people who did it? Which is a legitimate question. And then I finally got the answer. It's because it didn't really happen. See, they are the people who did it. It was the Houdini on the Orient Express.